I'm going to talk about publishing apps. Everyone should do this. If you've written something which is kind of okay, you should have a plan to get it out there, because it's just the act of actually getting an app certified and published and in the store is quite a complicated and interesting one, and I'll cover how you do that a little bit later. But everyone should publish something. If you take one thing away from this talk end of today, it is that you should really work to get what you've built and push it out there. So we're going to look at why you should publish your programs, company rules, a little bit about thinking about what happens when you do publish an app, how you publish it, and a few words at the very, very end about making money. You're probably not going to get rich. Flappy Bird clone, probably not going to do it for you, I'm afraid. There was a time, but let's start with the why, because this is, I've kind of hit it very hard and I want to keep on going this. The only way to get good at programming is to keep doing it. Have you folks heard of a guy called Jeff Atwood? Yeah, Jeff Atwood is one of the men behind StackOverflow.com, which is a fantastic resource. He writes a blog called Coding Horror, which is worth a look, and he covers programming and the life of the programmer and all kinds of good stuff. And he's generally speaking right on the money. And his 3 things are: stop theorizing, don't just sit there thinking of stuff, actually write stuff and learn from the mistakes that you make. And that includes mistakes that you make putting out apps that are rubbish. If you put an app out and it gets lousy feedback and no one loves it, then this is, in my case, it's kind of par for the course. No, not quite. It's a way in which you can learn by doing, get the feedback, incorporate it, produce release 2. The great thing about publishing apps is that once you've paid your membership fee to get in, which in the case of the Microsoft App Store and Google Play is very, very low, then you can just shove new versions out there at no cost to you. So it's all so easy to do. And so you should make things, ship them, get feedback, find out what the customer wants and iterate. Publish your app when it's 40% finished. Don't wait till you have 10 game levels, they might all be rubbish. Put 1 game level out and then see what comes back to you from the comments and what they want the next level to have in it. So don't think, I can't publish it till it's done. If it's a multi-level game, get level 1 out there fast as you can, and then start building level 2 based on what the comments say about the first one you've made. Get the feedback in and act on it, and keep coding. Everybody should have a programming job on the go at any given time. There should be a thing you're working on, a device you're fiddling with, a piece of game machinery or whatever that you're playing with. My trouble is I have so many on the go that I forget to finish them, and I start on new shiny ones and not bother with the old ones, which is that's my particular personal problem. But see if you can follow some of these through and get them out there, because in your position, if you've got stuff in the marketplace, if you've got things out there that people are downloading and using, that's a really fantastic position to be in. So attack this. Really just keep on coding and doing stuff. People might be impressed if you succeed at everything, but they might not believe it. I don't know. You may be better than me. But the only way to do this is to keep publishing stuff, and you get great feedback if you publish things. And so please, one of the things that is depressing is just how rude people will be about stuff they've got for free. They'll give things that have cost them nothing, slating horrible reviews, which I think stinks really. It's not a very nice thing to do, but you get nuggets of information in there, you get a following, you start moving forward. So yeah, make a name for yourself by publishing. This is how I made a name for myself. How many of you have heard of Cheeselander? Oh yes. This game, I actually, for the purposes of this session, I actually bought a copy of Cheeselander, which cost me 79p, which I will get back less 30%, because it's in Microsoft Marketplace at 79 pence. It's had 4 5-star reviews. And the game, here's the game, runs on my phone, hit the button, land the cheese on the bread, like that. Oh, I failed, so try again. And we have to just slow it down, land the cheese on the bread, up too fast again. If you get it right, it lands on the bread, and it plays a little tune, and that's the game. Okay? There is nothing. I wrote this as a stupid demo for one of the jump starts I did on Windows Phone, and I was dared to publish it, so I did. And it's out there now, and anybody in the world can download Cheeselander and play it. If you've got a Windows Phone, then it'd be really rude of you not to now, and you can give me 79 pence as well. But don't give me a horrible review, because I want to keep my 5 stars intact. Actually, the reviews are funnier than the game and take longer to read. So that was my first game. No one's bought it really, but quite a few folk have heard of it, and it's out there, and you can see the level of appallingness you can produce. It's actually kind of fun. Now, I put a timer on it so you could try and land it at different rates and stuff, but I really wrote Cheeselander as an experience of publishing a game, and learned quite a lot from it. I have published other games since then with a bit more to them, which we'll come to a little bit later. But publishing things works. I was at Platform Expos over the weekend. This is Smashed Crab Studios, and these guys here are all ex-graduates of Hull who are now actually have logos and company plans and stuff out there. And they, until last year, were students at Hull. And they were a team called Rusty Spoons that took part in lots and lots of, which apparently is quite a rude, so I'm not quite sure what that means, but anyway, we'll move on. And they took part in lots of 3-theme games and published things that they made on the way. And in fact, one of their products at the moment, a game called Flat Out, which is a very nice little Windows Phone game, is all based on an Imagine Cup entry they did a 3-theme game entry they did last year. So there's also, the other one you'll probably see is Beta Jester, who now actually publish stuff as well. And they form a little collective. And there's 3 or 4 that I can name off the top of my head, little collectives that students have formed, publishing games and getting stuff out there on the back of their 3-theme game. So they come to 3-theme game as part of their sort of game development process. They build up prototype under pressure, take it away, refine it, and make it into a thing they can sell. So this works. It's a trajectory that you can actually follow through and deliver on. And there's all kinds of little companies now growing up on the back of 2 or 3 3-theme game entries and forming a company based on that. So it's a known thing. It works. It gets you places. There's lots of folk who've actually done this. If you're going to do it, one thing I would mention, which is just a couple of slides that I'd encourage you to think about. If a bunch of you take part in 3-theme games as a team, come up with an artifact that you want to get out there, it's probably worth spending a few minutes right at the start just setting out a few rules in terms of how you're going to share out what you've made and what people's responsibilities are, and this is kind of important, what happens if they move on. Because these people's groupings change, people find interests and move on and whatnot. And it's best if you have these things sorted out at some level before you go. There's this thing called equity, which is basically the value of the group and the things it has made. And it's based on, I guess, how much you can earn from these things. Think about how you're going to share it out. You get equal shares. That's usually how it works. And what happens if one of your group leaves the group, joins a different one, someone new comes along? How are you going to manage that? And so you probably have a policy on a per project basis. The 3 of us worked on this one, so we all get a third each. 5 of us worked on this one, we get a fifth each. Fred didn't do much, so we'll give him a smaller amount. Plan it out a little bit. Don't go as far as getting contracts drawn up and lawyers involved, really. But what I would say is that if you knock out something which is bringing in a bit of money, which it could do, then it's best if you have a plan in terms of how you're going to actually manage that. There's a flip side to this which is kind of scary, and why I tend to write games. If you write a program which could go wrong and cost people money if it broke, then you might want to think about some kind of indemnity. Because if your wonderful mileage calculation machine or whatnot gets its numbers wrong, and these folks stranded in the middle of nowhere, they may well come after you and give you a hard time to try and get some recompense. So if you're selling applications, be a bit careful about that. I mean, no one's going to complain if Cheeselander breaks, because it's not totally unbroken as supplied. But if it's a proper thing, then you may want to think about getting a bit more formal on it. So just think about these things in advance before you get into bed with each other or whatever. And in that situation, you're going to get a happy ending. Write things down. Don't all sign contracts. Just make some notes about how you're going to pass things around. And if you've got people in the group that are responsible for things, maybe what they do, so you can actually sort of do a bit of planning. It's not a daft thing to do. A couple of years ago we had a local sister that came and gave us a talk on in the rather useful thing about how you would form a company, and I may well invite him back for next year, because it's actually not complicated, but it can bring you all kinds of nice benefits. As a company you can apply for grants and things and think in terms of setting yourself up properly, which is kind of interesting and a thing you should consider down the track. But please start doing this as a student, because you should get things out there as a student. It's so easy to do and so cheap, you really should do it. So, how do you publish things? Well, first thing you do is sign up with your chosen platform host. I'm going to talk with a Windows hat on, but the same pretty much applies to Google Play. With the Apple App Store, it's slightly more expensive to get involved, mainly because I think they still charge an annual fee. I think it's $99 for a developer, and you have to buy a Mac. You have to pay the Mac tax. If you want to write programs for the iOS devices, the only platform you'd have to build them on is a real, honest-to-God Macintosh. The only way around that I've found, and I'm not quite sure how legal this is there are companies that offer racks of Macs on the web for you to compile against. So you can basically rent some space on a Macintosh somewhere in a big server room in Chicago or somewhere, and then just build the thing on there, remote desktop across, test it on there, a hand goes up, yeah?
What about virtual machines?
Well, the bottom line is that if you're going to do it properly, you can't run a Mac image inside your PC. The flip side works. If you happen to own a Mac, then use the Mac as a PC and as a Mac as well by using virtual machines. But there are things called Hackintosh, which is basically a hacked Macintosh that you can run in virtual machines and stuff. But I'm not really too keen on that because it's not completely legal. So what I do is I will go onto eBay and buy myself a very cheap Mac Mini, which I would then shove somewhere at home on the network and then remote desktop into that. That's how I would do it. Yep.
No, because it's cheap, it's bad. Like, will you be able to develop applications on it?
Say again?
If we has 2 gigs of RAM or a bad CPU, will you be able to develop applications?
If it's a fairly slow one, as long as it's current and you can put the latest version of the OS on, it'll generally be okay, because you take away all the user interface stuff. You're doing all that stuff on your machine and just remote desktoping into it. So a fairly cheap one you can get away with, in my experience, because you're just using it as a build server and pretty much nothing else. The way you can hook these things together is you can do all the heavy lifting on your end, and yeah, do some digging around with what I would suggest. But yeah, my approach, if I wanted to write some Mac stuff, is I'd rush out and get myself a cheap Mac Mini, slap it somewhere on the home network, and then just remote desktop into it. That's what I would do. To write Android stuff, you can do that on a PC. Robert's tip for writing Android stuff, which I must do a whole seminar about, is the latest version of Visual Studio 2015 has Xamarin support built in and an Android emulator, so you can do all your writing of code for your Android apps in Visual Studio, which is just wonderful, because Eclipse is okay, but it's not Visual Studio, because nothing is. So download that, install that, get the Xamarin tool chain in, and now you can actually do everything on a PC, which is a great place to be, and in Studio, which is even better. So I'm going to talk in terms of the Microsoft way of doing things for Microsoft Store. You go to dev.windows.com, you sign up, you pay them your fee to become a developer, and then it's a one-off charge for these guys. And so let's have a look at, this is one of my other famous games, Rob's Red Nose Game, which I wrote a little while back. It runs on, there's a phone version and there's a desktop version, and so you can go on to Windows Store. This one's for free. It has Cheeselander built in as well, which is kind of cool. So one of the levels is basically play Cheeselander. And let's look at how I published the game. Do you want to see it? Yeah, you could want to see it. It's actually quite hard to play. This is the actual build of the game that's in the store at the moment. And so if I hit run, it'll run it on the local machine. And this is Rob's Red Nose Game. And if I turn the sound up, here we go. So if yeah, there you go, they all fall down to the bottom because that's what the gravity does. So Sound of music, yeah, why not? So you basically have a bunch of challenges to complete. Tap the screen to start, touch each nose. Okay, touch the cyan nose, it's that one. Touch all the noses, that's those two. Touch the spinning nose, that's that one. Touch the noses off the screen, that's that one and that one. Touch the biggest nose, that's that one. Touch the smallest nose, that's that one. Tipping's easy when you want a tablet. Down they go. Touch the non-moving nose. Okay, which isn't moving? That one? Yeah, gotcha. Touch the non-nose. That's a piece of cheese. That's easy. So now, this bit's hard because I have to do that. And then we go. Oh, she's under. Yay! Oh, come on. Bang. Okay. So now it gets harder, and so now I've got to do it against the clock to do more. It just goes on like this for a while. Touch all those three, and then and then it gets worse because I stop giving you help after a while. But there you go, that's my game. I'll let you just time out. It gets quite compulsive after a while. Smallest nose, that'd be you. Come on, there you go. Hit off, I'll do that. Yay! And then that one, I guess. See that here? That's even harder, and if I'm not careful, these guys will fall off the screen and I can't touch them. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll stop that because it gets carried away after a while. But that's Rob's Red Nose Game, and it goes on like that for a while, and it's all in XNA, and it took me a little while to write, and it's not particularly well put together, but I quite like it. So go back to the presentation here. Now, if you've written your game for 3ThinkGame and it's working, that's fantastic, okay? But there are some things it has to deal with to actually make it into a proper game that you can ship. And these mostly have to do with events that get fired in the game your game must respond to. And we're talking about things like, when it's activated, we have to set things up, load the settings and whatnot. If it's deactivated, we pause the game, we save the settings, and if it's exiting, we save everything. So these methods, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 in fact here, these get fired by Windows when stuff happens to your game. And deactivated in this context means, if I do this in Windows, if I do this, it should change to the next process. If we do Alt-Tab and whatnot, we're moving around between processes. And when you do that, what happens is that the foreground process gets kicked out and a new one comes in. If you think about it, if I'm playing the game and this happens on the phone rings, then what happens is my game gets pushed out of the foreground and the phone interface comes up. Now, when that happens, if the game kept playing, it would just count down and I would lose all my lives and die. So what happens in my game is that when you get deactivated, when you get pushed out of memory, we pause the game and we save all the settings. And so when you actually make a game that you're going to put into the store, you have to think about what happens to it if it gets paused and resumed, because this behavior is required. And you have to respond sensibly in these situations. And the kind of worrying thing is that you might get deactivated and you might never get activated again. Because sometimes, particularly on the phone call will come in, you'll answer it, blah, 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 blah. You'll forget to go back to the game, you'll turn the phone off, the game dies. So what my game does is it saves itself every chance it gets, so you have like a resume option, if that's how you're going to play it. So you have to have these bits of code in there to make it work. And here's the other thing which the game has to do. On Windows, you can have programs can share the screen. Have you seen this? You can actually have, you can snap things into Windows. When that happens, you get events firing to say the view has changed. And what my program does is very simple, doesn't matter which state it is, I just pause the game every time. So if you change the size of the screen, my game pauses and you can resume it in the new window or whatever you want. The bottom line is though that you have to figure out how to put these behaviors in. Just a simple straight line game won't actually do what you want. You actually have to have these behaviors in too, otherwise your app won't get certified. So yeah, it's quite straightforward in a game context because you don't have to do that much. The game should pause. Applications must persist data so they can be reloaded. And since you have a method which you call to save the game state to a file or something, just call that. That's what I do. The way that Windows works, and this is true of most of these multi-application environments, is that when you are about to get killed or whatnot, you get a method called, and you get a few seconds to tidy up and clear out before you're completely and utterly killed off. So you can do all these things in that time and push the status into file store somewhere. So when you resume, it all comes back. And there are some file store abilities built into the application framework that let you have your own piece of what's called isolated storage, which is where you can put the bits of your game. So it's all quite easy to do. So once you've actually got your app to the point where you think it kind of mostly works, you can prepare for publication. And this is quite fun. There's a great big thick document which you can read to get some good guidance on this. One of the things that you need to bear in mind is most of it's common sense. If you filled the game full of Simpsons sound effects and Family Guy artwork, then that's like a clash of cultures, I guess, but also a massive breach of copyright. So if you put things in, I think I mentioned one of our 3-thing game teams made a really fantastic game based on the Olympics, and they had the 5 rings and all sorts in their game. And we realised there's no way you could ever publish that because you'd just get sued. You wouldn't get past certification because they just say you're copying other people's trademarks. So don't make things involving Mickey Mouse or whatnot. Invent your own assets. Be very careful about where your artwork and your sounds come from. Worst case, make your own. And build this thing up and push it out there. I have to come clean at this point and admit that I've never ever managed to get a game or application certified first time because I always forget to do something or I always misinterpret these guys. But you can resubmit as many times as you like and you get pretty good information about why it failed each time. So the best bet is just to keep on trying. Persistence does work at the end. I had awful problems with one thing that I was trying to get certified which had speech in it, and the issue was to do with an undocumented bug stroke feature in the way the speech handling works. And the problem was if you start the app talking and then swap out of it to something else while it's speaking, that can cause the speech thing to tip over and your app must respond sensibly to that. Nothing told you how to do that until I found a very obscure blog post somewhere and wrote my own bit less obscure blog post about how to fix it, and so you go. But get the thing ready to publish and then send it out. If you look inside your application, I'll show you. Let's go and do that now. If I go and have a look in my Rob Red Nose game, here we go. If I go into Project and I go into Store, then this is effectively where you build your application ready for selling. And if I go, this one here, Reserve Application Name, what I can do here is basically pick a name for my app and reserve it for a couple of years. Now, that's very useful because it's a really... About when the Windows Phone first came out, about 6 people wrote Find My Car apps, which were the idea is that when you leave your car in a strange city, you run the application, it records the GPS and the time and everything else, and then when you want to find your car, you press the button and it plots a route back to the car and tells you how long before the parking ticket expires, okay? About 4 or 5 people wrote that, and then it was basically the first one in the store to get the Find My Car name, got the name that actually worked, which was a bit of a pain for the other two. But what you can do now is if you have an idea for your app name, you can reserve it, and that will last for a couple of years, and no one else can publish with that particular name. Then you can come back. Turns out that no one wanted Cheeselander. Strange, isn't it? And I called it Rob's Red Nose Game because that means that unless there's somebody else called Rob writing Red Nose Game, I should be okay. So you can reserve it. The license, again, that's to do with your registration. The app manifest is interesting. This is where you tell the system all about the application that you're building. And you do this at several levels. This is the display name. For some reason I called it 001 in front of the name, which turned out to be, that is the name actually in App Store. It is actually called 001 Rob's Red Nose Day. So be careful when you type that in because that's what appears on the thing. It's called robrednose.app. It's English US. That's my description. Now, one point I will make, it's in the slide in a few minutes, is that You should spend time over this. Okay? You should have someone whose job it is to make this stuff look really good and make people who read that really want to play your game. Okay? You shouldn't do what I did, which is write the game and then spend Wednesday night getting it in the store. So all the artwork, all the text and what have you is pretty rubbish. So the shop window for my app is actually pretty appalling. You should make this part of your sales pitch. This bit of text here could be a lot more interesting than it is, but there you go, it's not. These are the orientations you can use it. Landscape, it doesn't work in portrait mode or landscape upside down or portrait flipped. It doesn't have any toast notifications. If we go into capabilities, this is very important. You tell the store what kind of things your program does. You know, when you install an app, it says this app uses the camera, this app uses GPS, this app uses blah. Here is where you set that. So I don't use the microphone, I don't use the music, I don't use pictures, I don't use proximity, I don't use shared certificates. It's just a very, very boring app is mine. But if I did use any of those resources, I tick these boxes and then the App Store knows the application. I mean, it actually does a test. When you submit the application, it checks through the libraries and finds out which method it's calling. And if your app uses the microphone but doesn't say it will, that's a certification fail. You can't have that. So you fill these things in. You make a declaration, declarations are ways in which you can set things up that link to particular resources in the code. The one I wanted to talk about was visual assets. The background color, the foreground text. There's a scaled asset, which is basically what you will see in the store to describe the application. And I've also got some screenshots and things down here. The store logo, the badge logo, the splash screen, which is a bit small and gets scaled up. Like I said, if I was doing this properly, I would have gone to town on all this, but I was more concerned with getting the game out there, if I'm honest. That's the wide logo, and then that's the super logo, and so it goes. And you build all these things as PNGs, and you put them into this part of the system, and you submit the thing for its testing. But this is basically where you do it all. Project, store, and then capture screenshots is running the program and capturing the things on the PC, and the app package and whatnot will come to in a minute or two. So, oh, wrong one. There you go. So you go in here and you work it through, and it's very, very easy to do. Very easy. The app manifest is the thing I was just showing you, which lets you set up the description, the capabilities, the icons and screenshots. Spend some time on this. Robert didn't, and as a result, he's not made a huge amount of money, although this app is actually given away because I can't charge for it because it was a Red Nose charitable thing, and so I can't really charge any money and get the money back in any easy way, so had it end up being free. Pick a name and reserve it. Yeah, that means that you can be pretty sure that you can ship your product without it being clashed by somebody else. The package is this big lump of stuff which contains the assets, the code, and signatures and other bits and pieces. When you submit it, it's signed as being written by you, and it goes into the App Store as written by you. It's pulled down into people's phones. They have got the ability, should they wish to do so, of switching off apps from certain developers. So if you start writing an app that does bad things, they can turn it off. And worst case, they can revoke the certificate of the developer as well. So we can't publish any more games or anything else, which is, yeah, okay, you can do that, but that shouldn't happen too much. So yeah, work through it. It's worth the effort. It's kind of amusing. And yeah, I'll show you what happens when you get it out there. This is the dashboard for Windows Dev Center. And if I go into Windows Phone Store, then this will show me, there you go, I have made so far 72 US dollars, and these are my app downloads at the moment. I've had about 35,000 in total, and these are my downloads for, and there you go, that's that one copy of Red Nose game that I bought for myself. Yeah, go me. TipLight is a really stupid program that just makes the phone display a different color as you tip it round. So it controls the color by its own. Voice music is, I can ask Voice Music to play music for me, and it will actually find things by name. It's been overtaken now by Cortana, which is the voices ones in the phone, and Play Music is my most successful app. And I had the idea driving to work in the car. And the problem I had was that got the car and the phone talking over Bluetooth, and I wanted to play some music in the car, and that meant I had to actually press buttons on the phone. And I didn't want that. I wanted to start it all from Bluetooth. So it turns out that on the phone you can start apps running using your voice. So I made an app called Play Music, and all Play Music does is it finds a playlist on your phone at random and plays it. That's all it does. Okay? And it took me about an evening to write, and it's had about 15,000 downloads. Most of my downloads have actually been Play Music because it's actually done rather well. Other ones I've got. Yeah, here you go. There's any more to show me? What have we got? Oh, this is the different. Yeah, these are my. I made 2 other apps that didn't get certified. But what does it do? And Procrastination Challenge. This one failed to certify because I wrote a program that you had to figure out what it did by playing with it. And it was to try and teach people about the fact that black box testing is a way in which you can get programs to sort of tell you what they are by putting things in. And I submitted that, and they bounced it because you couldn't tell what it did from using it, you see. And so that sort of... But Procrastination Challenge was even better because that was a game. I had this idea. I was at an open day, in fact. I said to what I was talking about, I said, this great idea for an app called Procrastinate. What happens? The app starts and it says, press any key when you're ready to start. And you press the button and it goes, game over. Because it's called Procrastination Challenge, you see. And the longer you thought about it before you pressed the button, the higher the score that you got. You see, and I thought that was such a great idea for a game. And I wrote it over a lunch hour, pushed it in for certification, and they came back and said, this app does nothing. It just presses the button and the game ends. And yeah, another sense of human failure. I haven't dared push that. I put a comment on saying it's meant to do that. It's a one-line joke, but didn't get anywhere. So those guys never got certified. Play Music, I've got to produce an update for that sometime because it's based on the old platform, which will be retired at some point. But it's been my most successful application so far. The artwork's pretty rubbish, but most of my artwork's very rubbish. And so that is basically Robert's dashboard. But it'll show you your progress through the submission process. And yeah, the certification failure, they're basically PDFs that tell you why they didn't like it. And it'll tell me in here that we didn't like it because we're not quite sure what it's for. And so moving on from that, fair enough. If you actually do the publish thing in here, if I go into here and go project, and then I go store, and then I go create app package, or upload app package, do that one. I get bounced onto the app dev site now, and I get the chance to actually pull out my package and produce a new version of the program. And the nice thing about it is that once I've done this, here you go. So 20 downloads. Oh, that's depressing. I can make a new release of it, or I could remove it. And here we go. These are my certification reports, which are reasons why it didn't succeed. So if you open one of these and take a look, it failed. Security okay, content compliance failed. The reason was I'd missed out one of the icon files that wasn't required, and 4.1 was missing. Here we go. Look on here, it'll tell you what it is. You do drill down here to 4.1 and it tells you these are the things it must have, and so on and so on. So you work through. Most of it's all common sense, and if your app doesn't do very much, it's unlikely you get caught out by that. But yeah, it's all good. So that's how you do it. Have a go at this. It costs you a question, yes?
One of the things we get in the store, like they send you a message back.
Okay, how long does it take to get it published? It depends. They're getting faster, what I would say. But I've pushed the game out on Friday night for certification. It's been installed by Monday. I've done that. On the other hand, once or twice, what happens is you do that, you get amazing turnaround, you find an enormous bug in the thing in the store, so you push out an update, and that takes a week because life's like that. But it's never longer than a week in my experience, unless you're in a hurry, in which case it's no, that's not true. But I found this bug in it, and it's quite embarrassing. Moving on, making money. There's fundamentally three ways you can make money from your app. You can sell it for a price. but then no one might buy it. You can give it away and do the freemium route. I hate freemium personally. I really do not like it at all. If for me, I buy a thing, I own it, I can play it. So if it's £1 to buy it, I'll buy it, and that's it. If I find that it gets, I don't know how much I'll have to spend to finish this game off, then I'm not keen on that. But I think pretty much all the games in the marketplace, in the top 5 or 6 places, are all freemium, paid content stuff. So think about that as an option. Risky is nobody will buy it. I've seen some lovely models in office productivity stuff. There's a really nice CAD package you can get, which has got, as it comes, it's quite nice. And you can buy extra brushes and fonts and stuff to add to it, which is quite a neat way to do it. So think in terms of doing it that way and selling that content. Or you can try advertising. One of our students, his 3-theme game, which was a river race type game thing, he reckoned was earning him the price of a coffee every day on the back of his advertising, getting about 2 or 3 quid, which ain't bad. One chap who's a bit of a legend in the Windows App Store reckons that one trick you can play is to encourage in the game your users to press the advert buttons. So they get extra points in the game if they press the advertising buttons, because he gets money on the number of click-throughs that are from the adverts onto the websites. So he says, press this thing now for 100 extra points, and you press that, and then they get the extra points. And
Is that legal?
pardon?
Is that legal?
Is it legal? I don't think it's illegal.
As long as it actually gives you the points, it should be.
As long as he gives you the points, it's a fair do. But he's done some. I'm trying to persuade him to do a talk or something on the ways in which you get money out of people, because it's really interesting. He's got this game where you buy bags of gold to progress, okay? And it's one of the ways you can buy a little bag or a big bag or some sizes in between. And what he does is he makes the font size for the bigger bags of gold bigger text. And he makes the small bag look really, really weedy and not very interesting. And the big bag is like a big treasure chest with glowing stuff in it. And it's ever so slightly bigger than the smaller ones. And what he's found, because he's done a lot of studies on this, is that it really works. Doing that kind of stuff makes people click the big one. And if you have a markup so that the big one is sort of like about half the price of the small one pro rata, then people will buy the big one. And yeah, that kind of stuff, nudging people, really works apparently. And so, think in terms of planning that. The important point I'll make on this one, though, is that if you want to make money from it, build that in from the start. What you can't do is write the game or the app and then try and figure out how to monetize it. So if you're going to have a situation where you want to get money on one of those models, then deal with that early on. Think about how the game will work, how the game engine will work, what the mechanic will be, and if it involves buying stuff to keep going through, then put that in. This is really important. If you do want to make money, then think about it. If it's advertising, that's fine. If it's selling it, that's fine. If it's freemium type stuff, where you have to pay to continue beyond a certain point, think about how you will do that, because that's really important. Bottom bullet points also interesting. Quite a few apps these days don't charge because they're actually part of something bigger. The apps for ordering pizzas. Lots and lots of apps now are tied to services and other goods that actually sort of build out from what they provide. So you can think in terms of making apps that do that if you can find a decent partner who wants that kind of thing. There's quite a lot of money to be made in terms of writing apps for companies that want to use apps as part of their marketing policy. So I think people like Pizza Hut and whatnot have got very nice applications now for ordering pizza on your phone and that kind of stuff. So that's another way in which you can think in terms of getting some cash out of the situation by being paid to do that, which is quite nice. You might not get rich. There's no guarantee that you'll get rich, I'm afraid. But if you don't try, you're guaranteed not to get rich. So you should always have a crack at this. And from a portfolio point of view, you should have apps in the store. When you're going for jobs in a few years' time and you're looking to find things to talk about at the interview, your app portfolio should be one of the things on your list. So you should have stuff out there. And if the first 2 or 3 are rubbish and get lousy reviews, that's fine. Delete them. and then put some more out. Because don't wait till it's finished. Get it out there as soon as you think it's playable and fun. And if the demand is such that other people actually want to pull it down and play with it, then that's absolutely wonderful. Do that. And if you have a stupid idea that you can realise and push out there in a lunch hour, like I did with Play Music, then follow that through. Like I said, I was completely and utterly gobsmacked by the take-up on that. If I'd charged 79p, then no one would have bought it, I guess. I might have made some money on that one, but I gave that one away for nothing because it seemed to me too trivial. And yet, lots of people find it useful because it means you can just say play music in the car and the music starts playing, and it's stuff that you like. So it's a playlist of yours, and off you go. It's all quite clever. Yeah?
Can you pick out what you put it on for?
Yes. I should make that point. When you publish the app, you tell it which countries you're selling it in, and you tell it how much it sells for worldwide. And the way that the business works is that the store will take a percentage of your sale to pay for themselves. So in the case of Windows Phone, I think 30% goes to Microsoft and the rest comes to you. I think it's about the same percentage for Apple and Android stores as well. But you pick the price and whether it's free or not. You also pick the market. One of the, few years ago, one of our 3-thing game teams got Sheep, Falling and Parachute. And they came up with this game called Sheer Carnage, which was great. And it had these sheep falling down and you fired fireworks at them. No, sheep, fireworks and falling. And had these sheep falling down and you were firing rockets at them and they were blowing up and bits of sheep were flying everywhere. And it was really, really good. It was an excellent game. And there were sheep. Yeah, you seen it?
No.
It's good. You have a question?
Yeah. If it's premium, you still have to pay 40%?
Yes. You get the money. The question, if it's free, yes. But the thing with Sheer Carnival, it involved sheep and bad things, and they found that for some reason they couldn't sell it in Japan because the Japanese don't like people blowing sheep up or something. So if you sell it worldwide, which you can do, be a bit careful about regional sensitivities. There are people offering services to translate it for you as well. So you can, if you wanted to make a multilingual version, then you can actually get that done. There are also some really interesting auto-translate options you can play with, which might be quite amusing. For me, I always just sell in the UK. Another trick which people do, apparently, is release the game in somewhere like Canada or New Zealand first, because they all speak English. And if you get lousy feedback from them, then fix it and then release it worldwide. That way you can use those guys as like a proving ground. For what you've just made. That also works quite well. But yeah, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Flappy Bird did happen. You can actually make a business out of doing this. The chap with his bags of gold, he's making bags of gold. Really, he's doing very well. I think he's putting his kids through college and all sorts on the back of apps he's placing in the marketplace, which is kind of cute. So yeah, questions? If anyone's got any questions? Any more? Yeah. Which market would I recommend to develop for? Oh, you're asking a Microsoft MVP. Which market to? Oh, do the Apple one. No.
Marmalade.
Marmalade, yes.
Use marmalade.
Use Marmalade. That also is. I don't want to sound like a Microsoft person, but I'm going to for a second or two. There's millions and millions of apps in the Apple App Store, and the weird thing about I think it's up to about a third or maybe more than that of these apps is that they haven't been downloaded once by anybody, including the person that made them, which is really peculiar. The number of apps in the Windows Phone Store is growing. It's about 500,000 now, but you don't tend to get quite so many in there. And another thing which is weird and no one can quite explain, but I've seen pie charts and graphs that prove it, is that you actually get more people buying the apps for the Windows Phone than for the other platforms. So I'd try Windows Phone to start off with. But if you use Xamarin, which you can get as students really cheaply, I think it's for free actually, then you can write the application once and push it out in all three, which is kind of nice. You need that Mac to build for the Macintosh platform, or a friend with a Mac, I guess is the possibility. But for me, I would just slap something out in the one that's easiest to do, see how that goes, and then work through the others as you get time. Because, like I said, I don't see this for you folks as a make a million kind of thing. It's more like a make a career kind of thing, because it's getting it out there and experience of doing it means that you've got nice things to talk about at interviews and other places, and it builds you up a bit. And the strangest things happen. People fall over stuff and get impressed by it and get in touch, and all kinds of other bits and pieces roll out. So if it was me, if you're first year doing C# and playing with XNA, I'd get into the mono game side of things and just take your 3-thing game thing, spruce it up a bit and slap it out there, because you can do that in a weekend. And if it goes down fairly well, get Xamarin on your machine, get the mono game build for Xamarin, and then push it up to the Android Play Store, because that's another free one to do. And if that goes well, then the next step is to think in terms of putting on iOS. That would be my trajectory.